We are doing something very different for the month of March. I am interviewing some of my most favorite female entrepreneurs who happen to be therapists and coach, and they come from all over the place. My first interview is my friend Alisha Bowker Mudrock, who is from Miami, Florida. And we dive into a listener's question about prioritizing yourself, boundaries, people pleasing, all the things. It is such a great interview. It was so much fun. There's so many tangible things that you can take away from this episode. We get into the nitty gritty things of taking small, actionable steps to create really big changes in your life. You might want to listen to it twice and grab a notebook and take some notes while you're at it. And stay to the end. We've got a little bit of an exciting announcement at the end of the episode. It was a great conversation, and I really hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. So let's get into the episode. Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio, your go-to destination for meaningful conversations about mental health. I'm your host and your trusted therapist bestie, Cecilia Mannella. Join us as we explore the complexities and messiness of human experience by addressing your questions and concerns. I'm here to provide a straightforward and practical therapy advice. So grab your favorite beverage, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever tickles your taste buds, and get ready to embark on a mental makeover. Hello and welcome to Mental Makeover Radio. I am Cecilia Mannella. I'm your host, and I'm super excited to have you here today. I have my friend Alisha with me, who's joining us to dive into a question from a listener. Hi, Alisha.
Hi, thanks for having
Welcome
me.
to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here too. So I think we should start with Alisha. Tell everyone who you are. How'd you come here? What was a little Alisha maybe like? Why'd you end up where you are?
Little Alisha. Well, I'm Alisha. I grew up in Southern California, LA, Burbank. I have lived all over the US in 5 different states. I'm currently talking to you from Miami, Florida. And little Alisha liked to be in control of all things all the time and was very firstborn. So God
Why
bless
am I
me,
not
little
surprised?
sister, who went with the flow and let me just like have my day. But I think in the spirit of liking control and also liking to create and execute, I own 2 businesses, my therapy practice and my coaching business. And I had the honor of meeting Cecilia in our business course that we are both enrolled in, and we just connected on lots of different levels. So yeah, just kind of like doing a little bit of everything, but really, really have a very thriving and established therapy practice, which I love, but there are limits to therapy. So it's been nice to move over to this different brain in the coaching world. It's a little more expansive. It's a bit more creative in certain elements. Different parts of myself can be out there. So it's kind of nice to have both. And I'm learning a lot, and it's been a fun ride.
It's a super fun balance for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we also, to be honest, we probably connected on our need for control a little bit and also competition.
Yes. Oh, highly
I'm
competitive.
all about good and healthy competition,
Yes.
which I absolutely love. How did you get into therapy? Like, what was the drive to getting into the space of helping people?
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do in undergrad. My parents went to college. I grew up definitely in that years, kind of dating myself a little bit, like in that age when everyone just like
Date
went to
yourself, it
college.
doesn't matter.
It wasn't an option not to really, especially if I had like the means or the ability. So I just like went to college and did sociology and psychology because they were interesting. But I actually had a good friend's mom who's now passed away. But at the time, we were watching her son play football and we were talking, and she said, I think you should really look into social work. And at that time, I was like, what is social work? I have no idea. I went to a private Christian school my whole life. I was very fortunate to not have to know what social workers generally did, at least in the home. We didn't have one at my school. So I was like, I don't know. And the more I looked into it, I was like, oh, I can do therapy, which sounds really interesting. I like understanding people. I like connecting. I like talking, but I don't have to go to school as long to get my PhD. Like, great.
Right.
Because I like school, but I don't love school that much. So I applied to some places, got in to Columbia, which took me over to New York. Um, and then I kind of never looked back. I think it was always set up. I like people, I'm outgoing, I like connecting, I like helping, but it wasn't like I was a little kid saying, I'm going to be a therapist when I grow up. I don't think I ever like, I don't really know if I knew what I was going to be. And it just kind of fell in. Here we are. I just kind of like walked through doors and they lined up and they were good ones. So here I am today.
I'm not sure if anyone really is little and says, I want to be a therapist.
Right? It's not one of the
Like,
top,
it's
like,
one of those things.
astronaut,
It's,
nurse,
yeah,
doctor, teacher.
firefighter,
Yeah,
teacher, police
right.
officer. No one ever
Yeah,
says therapist
right.
until much
That's true. Maybe
later.
the new generation will, as we talk about
I,
therapy more, normalize it, but not ours. So,
I think they have like this bougie idea of what it actually really is instead
right.
of, what happens actually behind closed doors
Yeah.
half the time. Yeah. Yeah. So fun. And I know you have the passion of working for women.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
tell us about what has driven you into like that kind of niche.
Yeah, so growing up, I had kind of a complicated relationship with females, especially growing up in LA, Southern California. Um, that's where all the actors are, Hollywood, even though it was not in that world, like personally, my family wasn't in that world at all. It's just a very superficial town on some level. And there's just a lot of pressure. You're never skinny enough, you're never pretty enough, you're never this enough. And so I very much feel like I was taught to like hate other girls, right? Like I was like, I'm a girls guy. I like hanging out with boys better. Girls are terrible. And that's a horrible thing to like admit or to think about. But I do unfortunately think that this comes up a lot. Like women are more competition and a threat than um like a companionship, a support system that we all like there's enough for everyone, that we're all talented, beautiful, amazing in our own ways. And as like my journey sort of evolved and I got older and moved out of Southern California and into different spaces, met new and different people in different outlets. I did grow up in a very religious home. I don't really subscribe to that. I'm more spiritual now, definitely not religious. And so just moving out of that mindset and that culture as well really reminded me how amazing women are. And actually, I love sports. I like things that like men generally, I could hang and hold a conversation with a group of guys, but I really enjoy the complexities and the nuances and the beauty that are in women. And when we look at it in a less threatening way and a more, how can we help each other out? Like, how can I learn from you? Like, again, there's like enough for everyone. Let's all do this. It's just so much more rich and so much more fun. And so part of my work is really helping us all believe that to be true. And I'm always learning myself and really highlighting and trying to bring out those beautiful spaces and let people feel confident and proud of those things instead of trying to hide them, be small, fit the box, not be too much. A lot of what you're taught, especially in like the Christian faith, a lot of what I was taught in a relationship I had that was emotionally and psychologically a bit abusive, and just like I wasn't allowed to be too big. I was bad if I was. So just myself getting over some of these really hard things taught me I don't need to subscribe to that. And how can I kind of help others who maybe haven't been in the same situations as me, but have those limiting beliefs or feel worried about embracing their lives and really just like being the one in the driver's seat of them.
Well, it is like we're taught this like not just limiting mindset, but scarcity around
Mhm.
connection, right?
Mhm.
That there's only so many people we can be connected to. And so we have to hold on tight and kind of be competitive with each other as women. Not in the way that we joked around at the beginning, because I think the way we talk about competition
Different.
is building each other up, and it's very
Yeah.
different and
Yeah.
it's fun and enjoyable. But competition in the sense of like there's a winner and there's a loser. And with women, I think we're really taught that really young age that in order to compete, which is getting attention or getting resources or getting jobs or all these things, really depends on very few definitions of what it means to be acceptable or to be likable or to be attractive enough, right? So I can
Mhm.
hear the deconstructing of all these pieces and making your life much more expansive versus actually making it smaller.
Exactly. And having moved so
Mhm.
much and having to adapt and learn, I've lived on the East Coast, the West Coast, down south, in the middle of the country. Just like different people, different backgrounds, different cultures, and all in the US, but it also has taught me to be more open because I had to kind of like figure it out in the new place, right? I didn't have that like 20 years of whatever that I could just stay
Right.
in my small bubble. I had to get out there and learn and see. And I also love to travel. So I think that's also helpful, just like seeing the world, but living somewhere new and like in your day to day, having to unlearn and relearn and figure it out
Mhm.
adds like a whole nother layer than simply having the ability to have traveled a lot of places and seen a lot of countries and cultures and things like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah, and so another thing I probably another thing why we get along because 'cause I've also lived in other countries, right? And
mhm.
there's a flexibility that comes with that is very you can't really teach it unless you've experienced it. Is this like
Yep.
always joke about being a palm tree, right? And palm trees survive the storm because they're very bendy and they just kinda go back and forth. Whereas like, let's say a pine tree is very rigid. And so a lot of people we get really rigid with what we've been taught or what we've been told or even just culturally been taught about what it means to be a woman, and then we just try to hang on as much as possible without being very flexible.
Yep.
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah. So, let's dive into the question.
Okay.
Okay, so the question was asked by Shannon, and Shannon says, "How do I make myself a priority without feeling guilty and selfish? I struggle with focusing on myself because I've been taught that it is selfish, but I know that I can't keep on putting myself last on the list." So, like, such an inline question to
Mhm.
what we're talking about today. And
Mhm.
um, what are your thoughts initially about this?
I think I have a question for Shannon back is who told you it's selfish or who told you you're not allowed to be first, right? Because we've internalized these messages from somewhere. As a little kid, all you thought about was yourself first. I'm hungry now. I need this immediately. Like I'm just gonna put myself out there and no shame about it, right? And then we we learn how to feel afraid or how to be small or how to feel guilt or shame around things. And so I think if we my first thought is, what's informing that this is even a bad thing to do, or why would taking care of yourself be selfish? Like where have we even internalized that message from? Or how have we even come to that sort of that jump? Because to me,
Right.
on the surface, those two don't really go together
Right.
from a more
Yeah.
objective
And
standpoint.
so if it comes from childhood, let's say it came from a specific parent, whichever parent,
Mhm.
what are some ways or some strategies around unpacking that idea of having my needs met equals I'm being selfish?
I think one tenet of it is deepening connection to self to say, I believe I'm a person who deserves to have my needs met and I deserve to be a priority, right? Because if everything's a hierarchy, if I wanted to do a workout and then
Mhm.
my sister calls and wants to talk to me about nothing life or death, right? Just like needs me on the phone at that moment, by denying my workout and taking her call, I'm then saying, well, obviously she's the priority. Like, why would I be? And so, what does that say about me and my own relationship with myself, though, to immediately fall into that train of thought, right?
Right.
Like, why don't I respect myself as much as I respect my sister? why
Right.
why is my body's health and this thing I've committed to or planned for not as valuable as deciding what outfit she's going to take on her trip to Cabo, right? Like, or maybe it's a little more, maybe it's a fight with her boyfriend. I mean, maybe it's a little more
Right.
substantial, but why in that moment is it easier to say, well, hers is definitely the thing and not mine? And I think that comes back to like how I value myself, how I see my own needs, and how I even just like consider my worth in general in my day to day versus
Right.
everybody else around me.
Right. It's such an interesting thing because I don't think that most people connect the dots around that. The idea that okay, so like if using the same example, like if I'm going to work out and then the phone rings, so it's a text message or whatever comes through. Because people don't call very often anymore, so let's go with
I
text
know.
messaging. We're dating
Right.
ourselves here. We talk about calling people. Like, what are we talking about?
What's that?
Um,
No, it's not this.
um, it's like I don't think most people, most of us, really stop to think like, oh, if I say yes to her, that means that I'm not respecting myself.
Mhm. Or
Like
I'm saying
most
no to
people don't
me.
make that connection, right? Like saying yes to someone else is actually saying no to me. And
Yeah.
it's a really difficult connection for a lot of people, especially women. Like I do believe that men are better at this
Mm-hmm.
for a million reasons. And not that it's like blaming men at all. It's just that the way that we
Or socialize.
socialize men and we bring
Mm-hmm.
them up and how we like nurture sons and brothers and all these things is very different than what we do with girls.
Yeah.
And there's this notion that it doesn't even occur to them that it's disrespecting myself when I say yes to another person.
Yep. If anything, it's rewarded. It's like, oh,
Right.
look how selfless you are. You're so caring.
You're so
That's so
nice.
kind of you. And that's why I think we've created this weird hierarchy because we get points and recognition and props if we're so, like self-deprecating. And as helpers, I know that I innately tend to this. Like I find a lot of my own worth in helping people. And that can get tricky, right? Because that can be a slippery slope in the wrong way pretty quickly if I tie too much of my worth into that. And
Right.
then it's that line between helping and fixing. And and it's much more sexy and fun and like interesting to like get into someone else's stuff than your own, right? Like, oh, well, let's
100%.
not go there. Like, I'll fix you. That sounds great. Like me? No, I'm fine. So some of it's like some avoidance, some of it's some like just I don't want to touch that because of X, Y, or Z. But it is, I think, about that there's, like, this reward we get when we put ourselves last
Yeah,
that
and there's then on the flip side, there's a punishment,
Mhm, when you
right?
put
So
yourself
that
first.
when
Yeah.
you put yourself first, when you say, "No, I can't have this conversation right now," or "I'm gonna work out," or "I'm, busy," or whatever it is, the no, because I believe that we don't need excuses for our no's, and no can just be a no, and no is a
Yep. No, it's a
statement
whole
in of
sentence.
itself. It's a
Yep.
whole sentence. But then there's, like, this idea of social punishment or social discipline, so to speak, when there's a no that gets attached to it, and I think that's where the guilt potentially comes in. Because guilt
Yes.
is about doing something wrong, and
Yes.
shame is about being bad. So, I know we
Yes.
intertwine those words a lot, but
But they
guilt is
are
about doing
different.
something wrong. So when
Mhm.
Shannon says, "How do I make myself a priority without feeling guilty?" It's an interesting thing. Like, what's your take on guilt and when it comes to prioritizing?
I think you're gonna feel guilty for a minute until you don't. I
Or
think it's
5 or 10
unlearning.
minutes.
Yeah, but I think it's like
Mm,
unlearning something that's so ingrained. So the first 10 times you prioritize yourself, you might feel really guilty the whole time. And I don't think that means it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But it's like anything new that we're doing, there's a growing pains. And when we see at the end of the day, oh, like my sister doesn't hate me because I called her back an hour later after I did my thing, or my husband didn't divorce me for saying like no you unload the dishwasher today, or like whatever happened, my mom like still loves me even though I had her babysit whoever, whatever it at the end of the day, like when you get that reinforcement of oh look, the thing you feel so bad about isn't even real, then we can start to trust and enter this new relationship with putting ourselves at the top and releasing that guilt or it not even coming up. But unfortunately, I think you have to go through it to get through it. So I think you are just going to feel guilty in the beginning, but it's in building that distress tolerance, right? And just because we have a feeling, one, they're not facts, and two, it doesn't mean it's the most accurate representation of of what's actually going on. So I can have guilt and be doing nothing wrong. And I think
right.
that's hard for us as humans to like hold space for. But
Mhm.
that I think it's just like you just gotta push through.
For sure. And it's reminding people, like, we've all done hard things.
Oh yeah.
So you hear this all the time, like, "Oh, it's just so hard, it's just so hard." It's like, well, okay, so think about the hardest thing you've ever lived through, and in comparison to that, you're 10 out of 10, whatever that hard thing actually is,
Yep.
putting
Then
yourself first and setting a boundary is actually never gonna be a 10 out of 10. It's not
yep.
even gonna come close to it. Like,
Yep.
in this scale, maybe it's a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10, maybe a 4, and that's, like, in my opinion, really stretching it. Because I think that women often get so comfortable doing hard things that they don't take stock or inventory of all the hard things they've already done.
Yep.
And we're really good at dismissing things, we're really good at minimizing things, or just kinda saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Like, we're really great at that, like, "Oh, it's not a big deal." So then we don't give ourselves the credit, the fact that we've actually already done super hard things. And putting
Exactly.
yourself first in any situation is not even nearly as hard as the 10 out of 10 in your life.
And if we're gonna stick with this idea of but others,
Right,
maybe a buy-in from that direction is okay, but if you're taking care of yourself, you're able to show up way more authentically, more energetically, more wholly for the others in your life. So in theory, it pays off for everybody.
right,
But you right now not going to the bathroom when you really have to pee and like not drinking water and not eating and not sleeping, you're like a shell of yourself, and those relationships are suffering too. So the people you care for, the people you love, the people you want to just like spend time with aren't getting a really good version of you, let alone the best version of you. So if it really is still extrinsically motivated, I'm going to do this so I can show up for my best self, for my partner, for my friends, for my job, for my kids, my client, whatever it might be. So if that helps you, then you can look at it that way. We want to get to a place where we're doing it truly for us and like it
right,
is an internal motivation. But if that's like too foreign to start, then like make it about the other person. But let's work backwards, right? What we're doing right now actually
right,
is hurting everybody. It's not helping. It's not
right,
noble. It's not great. It's actually harmful. So,
right. And, we're such therapists because I wanna ask Shannon a question too. We're just like, "Give me a question, I wanna ask you a question back."
naturally.
We're just, like, so rooted in that. But what I would ask Shannon is, what is the consequence of not doing this? Because
Yeah.
often what I hear women talk about a lot is resentment.
Mhm.
I hear a lot about being really tired.
Mhm.
I hear a lot of stories around feeling really angry and
Mhm.
not feeling comfortable with that anger. So there's a stuffing down of anger. So it comes out being passive aggressive. It comes out in kind of snide comments in relationships or not being really clear in
Yeah.
communication and also feeling very lonely in relationships
Yeah.
because of it.
And yeah, and just like dead or disconnected or not
Mm.
dead, but like dead inside or
Dead
disconnected
inside.
um or what are you getting? So you're doing all this stuff for everyone. Are you now a millionaire? Did you get your dream vacation? Like, do you actually feel so good about yourself? I would
Mhm.
like really question the person who's like, I just like feel great. I just feel so good all the time. Like there is a
Yeah.
point where it just doesn't feel so good when it's unhealthy. And that pattern
Mhm.
of just constantly being the doormat is unhealthy. That there's a
Right.
difference between I can sacrifice my comfort or my time or whatever for someone when it's truly needed and feels appropriate and whatever else. I can do things I don't really want to do, but I know it makes someone else happy and I want to connect with them. So we can do that on occasion. Like that's a different thing than truly just being a doormat in your own life and not having an opinion or a thought or an awareness of what you want or what you need, or even like being on the list of things to do.
And I think like that emptiness feeling, I think a lot of women walk around feeling like that and they're not really always aware of it because they haven't
Hmm.
had the experience of something different. And when they step into, not even being the number one on the list, like let's be serious, even if you like put yourself at number five, that the difference of internal sense of self and fulfillment and like you said, like just moving away from that deadness inside and bringing in more color into your life
Hmm.
is absolutely like transformational for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like just changes everything. Do you have any tips around navigating resentment that shows up from giving like all the time without having any boundaries around it?
To me, if you're feeling that level of resentment, that's information you should be listening to
A good way to
because
say it.
no
I love
one
that.
no one in theory we shouldn't be feeling resentful ever, or at least to that frequency. So either like is this a relationship you need in your life, like is there something just fundamentally not healthy about it that this needs to go away entirely, or what are you participating in to allow this pattern to continue, which you are actually contributing to the things that are making you resentful. And again, fine line between a truly abusive relationship or something that's truly
Right.
outside of your power. But when it is a more balanced, equally powered, mutually entered relationship of any kind, and you are though contributing to patterns where you constantly are feeling less than or putting yourself on the back burner or not expressing or communicating your needs or doing stuff you don't want to do and then feeling resentful about it, you are just as much to blame and are just as much a problem in that as perhaps the other party. And you do actually
Right.
have the power to take action and to do something different. You just have to choose to do that. So I'd even
Right.
push back a little. Maybe it's not as popular, but I don't really have as much compassion in that moment. I'm like, well,
Mm,
what can you also do to stop participating in this cycle? You have
right.
the information. So like why are we still here? If it's in
Right.
a truly safe environment where that is a reality. I
Mhm.
understand there are outliers, but in this example, this is
Yeah.
not one.
I love unpopular opinions. You know what was really interesting around resentment for me was, I mean, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, and when she wrote Atlas of the Heart,
I
where it
love
kind of
that show.
described all the emotions,
Yep.
is when she talked about resentment being rooted in jealousy. It was like it blew my mind because up until that point, I had always this like we're taught that resentment is rooted in anger.
Mm,
Right, we're taught like is internalized anger. Like I don't know, in training in schools and all these kind of things, like resentment's just this emotion and it's kind of rooted in this internal kind of anger. But I've never really had anyone describe it rooted in jealousy. And when she broke it down in this way of resentment is a sign of jealousy because you're jealous of what the other person is getting. So jealousy is I
yeah,
want the thing that you have. So we talk
yeah,
about partnerships. It's like I'm so resentful to my partner. Well, why? Well, because they get to watch TV and do whatever they want, and they get to go golfing with their friends, and they get to la 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 la. It's like, well, you're actually jealous of that freedom,
exactly.
right? So it's not the resentment is rooted in this jealousy of freedom, but it's like
Right.
you can also have that freedom with finding your voice,
Like take it.
and then
Yeah.
just take it like it's there,
You can sit
and
and watch TV all day too. Like
you can
no one could do the dishes and we'll see what happens, but like you don't have to.
right.
No.
Right, and the pushback is, well, someone's gotta do this thing, and they hang on to the idea like, well, I
Right.
want freedom. I wanna go golfing with my friends, and I want my partner to take on all of these activities I'm doing. That's the only way to resolve resentment, which is actually not true,
Right.
right? Because like what you're talking about is this idea of like, well, then the dishes just don't get done, and who really
We'll figure that
cares?
out. Yeah.
Like, at some like, they're 2 adults in this situation, so why is it you feel an over sense of responsibility? And I
Yeah.
think that's what comes with not prioritizing your needs is that there's this not martyrdom, sometimes it is, but it's more of like, oh, and nothing will get done unless I do it. And if I don't
Which
do it, no
goes
one's going to do it.
which goes back to the see, I have to take it all on because look how good I am and like of
Right.
course I'm the responsible one.
Right.
Um
And it's that full circle moment. Then we get a
right,
lot of reward like, oh, you're so amazing. You're such a great mom. You're such a great partner. So
right.
wife,
You just
sister,
do it
whoever.
all. Yeah.
She does everything. She does it all. And then it
I
just
don't ever want to be
reinforces
that
that cycle.
person. I don't ever want to do that. I want to outsource the things I hate and I want to do the things I really want to do and then the minimum of what I have to do. Like that's my goal.
100%.
Lady of leisure is my goal. She does not do it all. She has lots of help.
Right. Well, the truth is like there is, and then totally going on this topic is one of the most things that aggravates me the most are, how women perpetuate this. There's a lot of women who are, social media influencers, big business people, like are major like influencers in this world who people look up to. And there's this idea like, oh, she just does, look at her doing it all with because women are also not being transparent with
About
the help that they actually are getting.
right.
Right? It's
Exactly.
this idea of like, "Oh, I do this," but they don't talk about the team of 20 people behind them that is managing their email, their websites, all their login, like everything, and they just show up and be on video and do their thing
Right.
because they're not talking about, "Well, I outsource all these things in order to do it." They give this false
Have to
image
pay.
that right, like, that you have to pay, which is fine. Employ other women, I'm all over that. I love like, being able to employ other women. But it's this idea that we're not also being transparent with it. So then it trickles itself down to someone like Shannon, who's like, well, I have to do it all. I can't make myself a priority because I have this long list of things to do because I admire so and they're also doing it. So if she can do it, why can't I do it? If she can make her house look beautiful, why can't I do it? If she has her kids in these matching outfits for a Valentine's Day photo shoot
Right.
at the
It
lake,
took
then
for
I
like
need to do it too,
yeah. Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Because we're not really sharing the fact that we have help
Yeah.
and that we have to outsource things. And that's totally like
Like,
great
let's
because men do it all
normalize
the
that.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
And let's
normalize that. Men
move
do it and they
around.
don't care.
Right. I don't do yards. If my husband wasn't interested and we had a yard, like, I would pay for that. I would never be like, "You know what? I'm gonna figure out how to use a lawnmower." I am fine that I've used one once in my life, and that would be the last time. Like, I will own that till the day I die, right? And that's
Mhm.
okay. And I respect that not everyone can outsource everything. I whatever.
Sure,
But,
absolutely.
like, I also am fine. Like, it doesn't make me feel less of a human to not wanna do yard work. It's just so uninteresting to me. And I like but I need to know that about myself, and I need to step into, like, that is also okay. Like, I don't need to do
Right,
it all again. And something you said
right.
that made me think was that comment about we're jealous. And I think something else we as women are jealous of is the ability for, let's say, our male counterpart to just ask or tell what they're gonna do, right? Like, you're
Right.
allowed to just ask for that or just, like, do that or say that, like, "Oh, no, you're not." And I'm jealous that you feel like you can just do that
Mhm.
and I can't, right? And so I think that goes back to that idea of how we're socialized and our voice and what, and again, it's nothing against, like, we should all be hoping for that, but, like, men are socialized generally they can walk into a room and say those things or ask those things and it's not profound and they don't have to think so hard about doing it sometimes.
Right.
Whereas like for us, it's like, okay, gear myself up to be like, I'm gonna take a spa day today. Okay. Oh, you don't care? I just do like 4 hours in the mirror of like prepping to tell you. Like, so I just think that's that
Mhm.
other jealousy piece too, though, is really we are jealous that they can just so easily ask or tell or say
Mhm.
something that we struggle with maybe at times for
I
ourselves
think
when
we're
it comes
just
to
so rooted in perfection, you know? It's like that research that shows that for job postings that women feel they need to meet 100% of the criteria before they apply for any job. And
right.
men generally feel if they hit about 70% of the criteria, they apply.
That's
If
it.
in some research is actually lower than that, it says like 50% of the qualification. I think that it demonstrates just the vast difference of how women and men see opportunities very differently, or this idea of stepping into something that's maybe not in your wheelhouse or
Mhm,
transferable skills or
mhm.
like in any of these spaces about taking up space or just saying, "Hey, I want an opportunity to raise your hand." It's like we think we need to know 100% of the answer before we raise our hands. And men are socialized to raise their hand if they're like, "I might know the answer. Let's like figure
Like,
this
what was
out."
the question?
I don't
I'm
even
sure
remember
I
the
think I wanna do
question.
that. I think I wanna do it, sure. Right.
Right.
Yeah,
And so they're risk takers. They're like, they
yeah,
just are willing to sometimes jump into different opportunities and
yeah.
to ask for the raise and for ask to what they need in a relationship. And they just assume that those needs will be met.
Mhm.
And women are socialized to have to meet those needs and then consider potentially their own needs instead of entering a relationship with a very clear idea what your needs are to begin with.
Yeah, but you need to know, and only you can
Right.
really define those. That's what we can't look to someone else to tell us. And if we are,
Yeah.
that's not really, like, energizing or accurate either. So, that can be scary, though, and I think sometimes
Mhm.
it's easier to avoid that and just be a little resentful and like know my role, then maybe you have to think that hard about the who. Like, well, who am I? What do I like? What do I want to be? It's just easier to just check off these other boxes that feel safer.
Right.
Um,
Well, and
and-
sit around and I hope and anticipate that someone's going to be able to mind read or somehow
mm,
guess what we
mhm,
need and want and desire, or they should
mhm,
know, like
mhm.
my sister should know this about me. My partner should know this. I want
Right,
this instead of
right.
just being able to voice it. And then we're always disappointed when we wait around for someone to mind read.
Always,
It's
always.
constant disappointment.
And I think we have this horrible myth that it somehow makes it less valuable if you have to ask for it. And I don't know where we came up with
Yes.
that, but I tell everyone all the time, I'm like, girl, I'm very serious about my birthday, and no one will ever do the things I want exactly how I want it on my birthday. So I'm going to plan it. And as
I
does not
love
take me away.
that.
Like, it's fine. Like, I want these things. This is how I want my day to look. No amount of me even like gently directing or very directly directing, it's still going to be the same. So, like, I know this will be important to me and I will be pissed if it doesn't happen. So I'm just going to do it. And it doesn't make it less valuable or less exciting.
No.
or like I missed out because my husband didn't plan me a surprise party that I didn't want. Like it, like it, I don't know. I think we want to be thought of and we want whatever and we want the movie, but that's not real life. And it sometimes the surprise or the interpretation isn't even the thing. So it doesn't feel as good. It's just better if you would have just been like, hey, da, 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 and then they did the thing
Mhm.
and here we are, right? So we just need to get over that too. Like it doesn't make it less meaningful because you ask or tell or share. It's actually much more rich and more meaningful in my opinion.
I
So
agree. I blame Hollywood for this.
yes. And they
Because
knew
if you
because
think
they had a
about
script.
it,
So of course they
every
mind
si
read it.
every single rom-com, every single, like, movie that you hold on to that is, so meaningful or such a great movie is just full of this idea of that someone should just know, and that
Yep.
voicing your wants and needs or desires somehow takes away from what is going to happen, and not
Yep.
this idea of, like, it actually makes it richer. When you're clear with what you want, it means you actually get what you want. And that's
Yes.
great. That's super fun.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
experience is great. It doesn't take away from it.
No.
And we have to get
Right.
over this idea that we want this like romance. And in fact,
Mhm.
like romance is not this like extravagant, out of this world experience. It's
No.
saying, I really want to do this. And then they do that thing. To me, that's romantic.
100%. Yes.
Mhm.
Or like you
And
hearing
moving it.
me. Like my
Yeah.
husband proposed over Scrabble, the Scrabble board. He knows I love games. He also won't play many games with me because of my competitiveness. It's also, not the best way, so he's a little like, oh. But like he knew that that
Mm,
would be, like he really heard some things about me, and I was very clear. Like I don't want a public. I mean, I got engaged,
right.
once, but I don't want a public engagement. I don't want this. I don't want that. And he heard those things, but I also wasn't gonna like plan that all out. But it was just so me. Like it was just him really listening to all the things that made me me and not what he also would have it wasn't the engagement for him, right? And and it was just so cool. It was just perfect, right? I still think about it. So
Mm,
I think that's where being vocal and being direct and being clear about stuff, there can still be elements of surprise. There can still be fun things. Like we're not taking all of that away in like a business agreement, but no one can just guess what you're thinking or feeling or what you're anticipating. So it's helpful to share that or it's helpful to
yeah.
kind of put those things on the table. So
Yeah. I think what comes to mind with that is that when we prioritize ourselves, so when we focus on putting ourselves on our list and do the things that are meaningful to us, the people around us learn who we are. And we
that's
forget
great.
that when we're rooted in pleasing everybody else's needs first and we're always last, then no one really knows you. No one really has a genuine idea of what you love and your quirkiness and your interests because you're actually not feeding that part of you. You're not demonstrating that this is actually really important to you. And so when you talk about your husband proposing to me, that's what it wraps up. It's that there's no way for him to have known that about you unless you were able to be clear about your needs around playing games. It
Yeah.
sounds really small and simple. And all these things are always small to me. They're never
Yeah.
these big, extravagant things. They're all the small things. But it's like people don't really know you. And we forget that. We think that we're busy hustling for everybody else and everyone's going to think we're kind and we're nice and we're thoughtful and all these things. But they don't actually genuinely know your heart and
Right.
what is important to you.
Right.
Mhm. And that is the biggest grief that I think comes with not being able to prioritize yourself is that people don't know
Yes.
you.
Yeah. It's like that
Mhm.
runaway bride when they're like, how do you want your eggs? And she's like, I actually don't know how I like my eggs
Right.
because she just liked whatever eggs the 12 husbands or husband to be's that she was with
Right.
before. And that scene just like always sticks with me. Huh. Felt old one day though. I said this to a client. They're like, "What's Runaway Bride?" And I was like, "What?"
You're
Okay,
like
okay,
you're
well,
like,
Julia
"Okay."
Roberts, she's still alive. But like it is like, how do you like your
Uh,
eggs? It's so silly and simple, but those are the things we need to know about
mhm.
ourselves in order to even know what's a priority or know what to communicate or know what to ask for. And I think that sometimes a lot of us don't. And then, but we're mad. We're
Mhm.
jealous of the people that do. We're jealous of the person that can ask. We're jealous of that. Like
Right.
it just feeds this like really unhelpful, unfulfilling spiral.
Yeah, so true. Oh, this is such a great conversation, Alicia.
I loved it.
So grateful for your insight and your thoughts. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on the Facebook, but I really just post the same stuff to there. So
To the
whichever
face.
is your poison that you like better. I have a Pinterest and I have a website. So I'll
And
share
what's
all
your
those.
website?
It's Alisha dash Bowker. I don't really know. A Kajabi something. I'll give you the link. I don't
Good
know.
job promoting yourself, Alicia.
I know. Just click it. No one
I'll
has to type in a website. There's
throw
no click of things. You can click the
I'll
thing.
throw it all in the show notes so people can find you. Alicia does put out a really great content on Instagram. What else is really exciting that we're announcing today is that Alicia and I are teaming up to do a free webinar on how to say yes to yourself. So,
Mhm.
kind of touching on some of the things we talked about today, but we're going to get into a lot of strategies. We're going to get into a lot of applicable, actionable steps that you can take. It's completely free. It will be, the link will be in the show notes for you that you can join and see excited about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some free
Mhm.
giveaways. It's gonna be
Right?
March 26th, a
March 26th,
Tuesday, 11 Pacific time, 2 Eastern time.
Easter time. We're gonna record it, so there'll be a replay as well. So if you can't make it live, please register anyways, because we'll send you
Yep,
the recording for it.
a little workbook,
Um,
all the
we'll
good
have workbooks,
resources.
we'll have all the things, and we're super excited about that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
gonna be great.
can't wait.
Alicia, you are my first guest on the Mental Makeover Radio, so
Woo!
I'm super. You're like
I
the
won.
first person I've ever
I'm just
interviewed.
kidding.
And I'm starting starting a tradition. So I'm going to end with a question. Um, and my question is, when you think about the history of your life, so the entirety of your life, what is one regret that you have, and what would you do differently in hindsight?
Mm. One regret. No. I mean, I guess I do now. I'm just trying to think of which one I wanna share. Um, this seems like a silly one, but it's the first thing that's coming to mind. I kind
Okay.
of regret not going to NYU over Columbia because I really liked the curriculum there better in hindsight, and I didn't love the experience. No offense to Columbia School of Social Work, but it wasn't my favorite for the amount of money and time. However, I'm like a glass half full person. I met some of my best friends there still got me to New York. Um, so I don't know that it was such like it ruined my life. Um, that's kind of a silly answer. Let me think of a better one too. But that's the first one I always still think of where I'm like, oh, kind of wish I would have gone to the other school. Um, and maybe in another season of my life, which I'm trying to be better, I don't know if it's like a specific moment, but like a regret of I let myself be a sidekick and the second what's the word, like the supporting actress in my own life
Mhm.
for a little too long. And I think I'm
Love
much
that.
better at it now, but that is something that I wish I had found my voice or my confidence or felt more allowed to be in the spotlight and certain things at an earlier age, um, and kind of let some of those unhealthy patterns play out in relationships more than they probably needed to.
Love that.
That's a better
Love
answer.
that. They're great answers. Alicia, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.